Good afternoon and welcome again to our Tea Time Talk here at Weeks Bay Reserve. I'm Angela and this is Clara, and we're part of the education team here at Weeks Bay. And today we have Will Underwood with us, and Will is part of the Alabama Coastal Area Management Program. Will, can you tell us a little bit about the Alabama Coastal Area Management Program and what you do with them?
Sure, I'm glad to be here with you all today. And the Alabama Coastal Area Management Program is Alabama's implementation of the Coastal Zone Management Act. And so we partner with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to provide funding and support to local communities to help improve their coastal resilience, to help them to plan for smart growth. And so our real goals are to help to balance economic growth and a successful economy with protection of our natural resources.
Very cool. So I hear you talking about resilience, and I'm wondering, we're standing out here in our marsh. What are we seeing around us?
So we're standing in the marsh here at Weeks Bay, right next to a research boardwalk. And as we pan around and look at this, it looks like an awfully flat place. It's a marsh. Marshes provide a lot of valuable services to us. They are places of nurseries for our commercially and recreationally important shellfish and other fish. And they also serve a very important function in filtering nutrients and also buffering storm impacts. And so we really want to understand where marshes are, how they're surviving, and what we can do to help marshes persist into the future.
Because that's really important for our coastal communities, right?
Right. The marshes really provide a function that is hard to mimic with any man-made structure. So marshes really buffer that impact from storm surge when we have a hurricane or a tropical storm come in. And so having healthy marshes adjacent to residential areas really can help to minimize storm damage.
So, Will, I see you've got a piece of equipment out here with you, and you're talking about the functions our marshes provide us with. How do we measure those functions?
So one thing that's really important to understand in a marsh is we look around and it looks very flat, but there's actually quite a bit of topographic relief or elevation change, but we have to measure that on a very fine scale. So it's something that we have to measure on the millimeter or centimeter level to understand. Marshes have zones, and so as you go from open water to upland in that transition, you go through different zones of plant types, plant communities, and those all function a little differently, and they're basically there because of that elevation change and how much exposure they get to salt water.
Yeah, so we are right next to the 98 bridge, and you can really see that zonation as you're driving over the bridge, can't you?
Right, you really can, and especially now, we've just recently did a prescribed fire here through part of this marsh, and as things are greening back up, you can really see the different plants. So there are certain things that are down right by the water's edge. All of this happens in about 60 centimeters of elevation, so less than 3 feet of elevation change from open water to where we transition to the forest.
And so when we think about things like coastal resilience, why is it so important to measure our marsh elevation and record that change in zonation?
It's very important to understand that elevation because there's a couple reasons. One is we don't have a very good concept of how much elevation capital that we have. How much space is there for marshes? We know that we're having sea level rise in this area, and so marshes have the ability to move. They can accrete, they can build up sediment and grow elevation in place, or they can move up slope, so they can migrate up the slope. And traditionally we've measured elevation in a place like this using LIDAR, so it's a laser sensed from an airplane, and there's a lot of error in those data sets. And sometimes the error is more than the actual elevation range of the marsh. And so we work really hard to come out and take more fine scale measurements in the marsh. And so this instrument that I'm holding is a real-time kinematic GPS unit. It basically is a really fancy GPS that can put you in a cube of about an inch on each side. So the most important part is we can understand the elevation there, whereas normally we would not be able to get that from a GPS. We might get error of several feet. We're getting error of a couple of centimeters of elevation error. And so by going around the marsh, gridding it out, and taking points for this, we can develop a topographic map that tells us what elevation capital we have in the marsh and where we interface that with the plants that are here, and then we get a very good concept of how long a marsh could persist, knowing what the rate of sea level rise might be. So we can understand how our marshes are going to adapt in the future to sea level rise.
That's really interesting, and I encourage all of our viewers to come and take a walk down our normal boardwalk, which is right behind the visitor center, because if you do that, you come to this great overlook where you can see the marsh, you can see the zonation, but you can also see where we burned recently, and you can see how that marsh is migrating further back and kind of upslope and taking, colonizing where those open spaces are from those prescribed burns.
And that's one of the really important things about the work that we do, is trying to understand where we have space for the marsh to migrate upslope. So as you go up our river systems, most of our rivers are so highly developed now with bulkheads and other obstructions. Some places are just natural elevation changes, little bluffs that prevent the marsh from moving upslope, but also we have places where we have bulkheads that stop that. And so those are barriers to that migration of the marsh upslope. And so as sea level continues to rise, we will lose marsh on the lower end of the elevation, and there won't be anywhere for it to go on the upper end. And so having these natural areas like Weeks Bay provides a great migration space. And so that's one of the really important things about preserving all the land that we preserve here.
That's really great, and I hope you've enjoyed our tea time talk today. I know we were a day off because of the weather yesterday, but please join us in 2 Wednesdays from now, for another one of our tea time talks. And don't forget, you can put questions in the comment box, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And until next time, I hope you have a good week. Bye-bye.